Have you ever walked through a college campus and heard people from different countries speaking completely different languages in the same room? Why do these languages exist? Why do they sound so different from one another? And most importantly, is there a way to make learning a new language easier? Welcome to Brainstorm Everything. Today we're going to explore one of humanity's greatest inventions, language. What is language? At its core, language is a tool that allows people to send and receive information. Humans begin using language from the moment they are born. A baby may not know any words yet, but they still communicate. When a baby cries, smiles, laughs, or points at something, they are sending messages to the people around them. A cry might mean, "I'm hungry. I'm uncomfortable. I need attention." This is why body language and facial expressions are also forms of language. They communicate information without using words. As we grow older, our thoughts become more complex. We want to share ideas, experiences, emotions, and plans. To do this, we learn words, phrases, and grammar that allow us to express increasingly complicated messages. This reveals an important fact. Language is not just a collection of words. Language is a system that helps people communicate, cooperate, and live together in society. And this principle applies to every language on Earth, the universal structure of language. Although thousands of languages exist, most follow a surprisingly similar pattern. Let's look at a simple sentence. I want to eat an apple. This sentence contains two important parts. 1. The subject, who is doing something. I. 2. The action or idea. Want to eat an apple. The subject can change. I want to eat an apple. She wants to eat an apple. They want to eat an apple. The action can also change. I want to eat an apple. I want to buy an apple. I want to throw an apple. Now let's compare different languages. English. I want to eat an apple. Spanish. Quiero comer una manzana. Chinese. 我想吃苹果. The words are completely different, but the basic idea remains the same. Someone plus action plus information. This pattern appears again and again across most human languages. Different languages may arrange the words differently, but they all need a way to answer three basic questions. Who? What happened? To whom or what? Once you understand this, learning a new language becomes much less mysterious. You're not learning an entirely new way of thinking. You're simply learning a different code for expressing the same human ideas. The second rule that almost every language follows is the use of words that express emotions and feelings. Imagine I simply say, I eat an apple. You understand the action, but you don't know how I feel about it. Now let's add emotion. I am very happy to eat an apple. I am excited to eat an apple. I am disappointed to eat an apple. I am forced to eat an apple. The action stays the same, but the meaning changes dramatically. The same thing happens in everyday conversations. I am tired. I am extremely tired. I am exhausted. Each sentence gives a more precise picture of what the speaker is feeling. Without emotion words, language would still work, but it would sound very mechanical. Imagine a robot saying, food consumed, energy level low. Technically, the message is correct, but it doesn't feel human. Humans don't just communicate facts. We communicate feelings, opinions, desires, fears, and excitement. That's why every language develops vocabulary that expresses emotions. These words allow us to add color and personality to our messages, making communication more accurate and meaningful. Whether you're speaking English, Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, or any other language, you'll find words that help people express not only what happened, but also how they feel about it. The third universal rule of language is time. Time helps us understand when an action happens. Imagine I tell you, I want to reserve a restaurant. You understand what I want, but there is a problem. When do I want the reservation? Today? Tomorrow? Next week? Without time information, the message is incomplete and can easily cause confusion. Now let's make the message more precise. I want to reserve a restaurant for today at 5 p.m. I want to reserve a restaurant for tomorrow at 12 p.m. I want to reserve a restaurant for next Saturday evening. The more specific the time information is, the more accurately the listener can understand the message. This is why every language develops ways to talk about time. For example, English, yesterday, today, tomorrow. Chinese, 昨天, 今天, 明天. Spanish, ayer, hoy, mañana. The words are different, but the purpose is exactly the same. Languages need a way to tell us whether something happened in the past, is happening right now, or will happen in the future. In fact, many grammar rules that seem difficult when learning a new language are actually built around time. That's why English has sentences like, I eat an apple. I ate an apple. I will eat an apple. The action is the same, but the time changes. So our third rule is simple. A language needs a way to express time so people can understand when an idea, action, or event takes place. So far, we've learned that languages need ways to express who is involved, emotions and feelings, time. But in real life, we rarely communicate just one simple idea. Most conversations contain multiple ideas that are connected together. For example, I could say, I want to reserve a restaurant. That's a complete message. But what if I want to explain why? Now I might say, I want to reserve a restaurant because I don't want to spend time cooking. Notice that there are actually two separate ideas here. 1. I want to reserve a restaurant. 2. I don't want to spend time cooking. To make the full message clear, we need a word that connects these ideas together. In this case, the connection word is because. Every language has words like this. For example, because, and, but if. So let's look at some examples. I am hungry, so I will eat. I want to go outside, but it is raining. If I finish my homework, I can play games. These connection words tell the listener how different ideas relate to one another. Without them, communication becomes confusing. Imagine saying, I want to reserve a restaurant. I don't want to cook. People can still understand the message, but the relationship between the two ideas is less clear. By adding because, we instantly show the reason behind the action. That's why every language develops connection words and grammar structures. They help us build larger, more complex thoughts from smaller ideas. In a way, words are like building blocks, and connection words are the glue that holds those blocks together. Now that we've broken language down into its basic rules, let's talk about a practical question. How can we learn a new language more effectively? Most people start by opening a vocabulary book and memorizing hundreds of words. Then they study grammar rules and try to combine everything together. But there may be a more natural approach. Think about how you learned your first language. As a baby, you didn't start with grammar textbooks. You didn't memorize vocabulary lists. You learned by communicating. At first, you used simple sounds, gestures, and facial expressions. Then you gradually learned words, sentences, and more complex ideas. In other words, you learned language as a tool for living, not as a subject in school. That's why when we speak our native language, we don't usually translate every sentence in our heads. We simply think, and the words come out naturally. Our brain has learned to use the language directly. However, when learning a new language, many people rely heavily on translation. The process often looks like this. Idea to native language to translation to new language. This takes time and mental effort. Instead, we should try to build a more direct path. Idea to new language. The closer we get to this process, the more natural the language becomes. That's why practicing conversations, even with a very limited vocabulary, can be so powerful. Just like a baby, start with simple ideas. I am hungry. I like coffee. Where is the bus station? I want to eat. These sentences may seem basic, but they train your brain to use the language as a communication tool, rather than a translation exercise. Over time, your brain becomes familiar with the patterns, emotions, timing, and connections that make up the language. Eventually, you stop searching for translations and start thinking directly in the new language. And that's when real fluency begins. Language is not a dictionary. Language is not a grammar book. Language is a tool for expressing ideas. The faster we treat it as a living tool instead of a school subject, the faster we can learn it.